So I'm here at the Indianapolis airport. I missed my flight. So I've been here for about 15 hours now. It's about 2 o'clock in the morning. My flight, I had to reschedule. It doesn't come in until 11 something. Looking for my e-cigarette. I decided I'm gonna start a YouTube blog or something, I'm not sure, in memory of my father. Some of you out there who don't know who I am, my name's Danielle. I was my father's last heir, his only child. Kind of killed off the Dritts, but he was John Dritt, D-R-I-T-T. I'm Danielle Dritt. I called him Danny. And he had a problem with drugs. Not per se drugs. You know, he had gotten into some issues with anxiety and everything else when he was younger. And his grandfather, or his father, my grandfather, took him to see a doctor. And they put him on diazepam when he was 15, which is now known as Valium, or, anyways, Valium, whatever. Now I have lots of stuff, Klonopin, everything else. And he got onto some opiates. Now, mind you, this was years ago. And for at least the past 30 years, my dad has been on opiates. Not on opiates, actually on methadone, because he wanted to get off the opiates. Well, getting off of methadone is almost harder than getting off the opiates. Methadone is basically just a synthetic opiate. So if you take opiates, you're not going to get high. He was found dead in his apartment a couple days ago. He had always told me two things. He always told me, one, that if they took his medicine away from him, he would overdose because it's the easiest way to go. He also said, number two, if he got to the age that his parents got to, and he couldn't, quote unquote, what he said, wipe his own butt, then he would do himself in also, because he doesn't want to put me or anybody else through that. So, as you know, there's this opioid epidemic going on, and they took my father's opioids, his methadone away. So, I keep getting those two mixed up. It's not an opioid. It's a synthetic opioid. As I said, he's been on it for 30 years. He always told me, I'm 30. He always told me that when I was born, he looked at me in the crib and he said that he can't do this any longer and he wanted to go get help. So he went to the methadone clinic for help, and it did help him. It still hindered him a little bit, but he wasn't out there shooting up. He wasn't out there. He was legally getting medication to make himself feel better and make himself be able to go on and do what he does. He was a professional guitar player. He performed with the Bertie Castle show. I can't think right now. Clover Willis. A lot of other bands. And a lot of people know him, have known him. Very popular man. Very talented. More talented than I've ever seen anybody. But he was found face down on his floor in his apartment with his arm reaching out towards the door. I'm mad about the whole situation. They took his methadone away, something like I said he's been on for 30 years. Sorry, I get off track. He's been off of it for He's been on it for 30 years. They took it off of it for a month, and if anybody has ever gone through any kind of opiate withdrawal, Just times that by 100 trying to get off of methadone, something he'd been on for 30 years. None of the pharmacies would fill his doctor's prescriptions for him. So he went and ended up, if I'm not mistaken, saw another doctor who did give him a dose of methadone to take home, but it wasn't his normal dose. Now, a lot of people are saying it was actually put down on the death certificate that it was accidental. It was an accidental overdose of diazepam and methadone. But, let's see. With everything he's ever told me since I was 15 about, doing himself in, I found this notebook. Kind of shoved away. Now, keep in mind, 2 weeks before he died, he had called me. Something I really regret. He called me asking me for help. He wanted to move to Florida, and because he wanted to see if he could get on a clinic down here that would accept Medicare. I have 3 children, a husband, going through custody battles and things myself. Basic shit you go through when you get a divorce. And I avoided his phone calls for the last 2 weeks that he was alive. But, anyways, that's something I'll never get over. But he did tell me he got a new phone, and was very computer illiterate and phone and all that stuff. He said he wanted to go on to YouTube and put something out there for the world to know, because he's not going to be around much longer to tell people about it. So I think he knew that either A, he was doing himself in, or B, he was going to die. His handwriting was hard to read, so I had been sitting in this, I've been sitting in this airport for so long that I decided to really go through and read as much as I can. I don't know if there was more to this note, because it kind of ends really weird, but I don't know if pages fell out. It was a really old notebook. Anyways, I'm just going to go ahead and read what he wrote. Okay. It says, "Since you are reading this, it means I'm no longer on this earth. Thank you for publishing this." I think he said that because he wanted me to let everybody know. Except us. Alright, so, "Since you're reading this means I'm no longer on this earth. Thank you for publishing this. I really mean thanks, because there are so many out there in this world with the same problem. The opium problem. That makes for a lot of copies and sells and loads of papers and magazines, giving politicians lots of time on television to show their firm strong," and he put a word I couldn't understand, "incredibly angry tough side, equaling votes. Don't people know that this has been going on for over 3,000 years, and that it's not going to stop no matter what is done, no matter how many are incarcerated, deported, or even killed? The more oppression on people, especially people on these medications, the more resistance that will be encountered. Can we answer the question as to why, until 1914, this was not a problem? A person could go to the grocery store, drugstore, etc., and buy these medications. There were no controls. Heroin was very hard to keep in stock. Bayer heroin came in the same box as their aspirin does today. But after 2,500 years plus, it was pulled off the shelves, leading many people into criminals. The majority of them fairly desperate. Why was there not much of a drug problem until the quote-unquote war of drugs began? The more restrictions, the more ways people found to get it. Mafia naturally jumped in head first, making millions, just as alcohol in the prohibition. Prohibition, hey, that really worked, huh? The Cool County Jail in Chicago, Network News aired a special, interesting program not too long ago. The sheriff brought up a good point, not addressed much before. Besides the problems of overcrowding are the problems of successful people who lose their jobs and benefits because they have a small bag of pot or a few pills. This throws them into an economical cycle that they cannot escape. Hey, no tolerance. The war on drugs seems to be elevating, but the more elevation, the more problems, the more lives ruined by the government and local law enforcement. Where does the money come for this quote-unquote war on drugs? I can't imagine. Why? I mean, do things seem to become useful, sought after, needed, etc. only after they are prohibited? Again, look up prohibition. What is success? All in capitals. Nobody hurt there. No innocent people hurt there. No unnecessary death or destruction there either. Oh, and of course, no payoff to judges and police, etc. That's where it ends. Now, like I said, this journal's really not per se old. It's just in the last couple of days of his life, things got into a scramble, I guess you could say. His apartment was a disaster. He couldn't eat. I'm really mad about how the coroner handled it. They left, his body was there for 3 days. They're supposed to have a cleaning crew that comes up afterwards and, clean up a mess. And they didn't. He fell face forward, and there was remains of his body there, secretions and things like that. It smelled really bad, and we were supposed to clean out the apartment. I said, fuck that. I went in there, and me and my aunt, we took everything that we could salvage and everything, that was heirlooms and things like that, and I ruined the place. I threw every couch upside down, broke every dish. I plan on, when I get back to Florida, calling the Brown County commissioner or health services and letting them know that there is remains of a dead body there, because they can't expect us to clean that up and then put somebody else in there and rent it out. It's biohazardous. It's going to make somebody sick. And it's just completely fucked up the way everything happened. And I feel like a lot of the reasons why things happened the way they did, and the way his body was treated, and the way his apartment was treated, was because they stereotyped him as being, he played guitar, he didn't have a job. He did when he was younger, but he had a lot of issues. He had a horrible hernia that hurt him. I mean, something that he's been going through for a long time with this hernia. And I think they really did stereotype. They thought he was a druggie. My aunt said, before I was able to make it up there, my aunt wanted to go into his apartment and, get some of his stuff and whatnot. And the officer let her in, and the first thing he did was push her out of the way and go and grab his lockbox, which had his medication in it. The coroner told the officer where the lockbox was, of course, and treated my aunt like a criminal, treated every like we're criminals because he had a drug, not even technically a drug problem, it was prescribed to him, and then they just tore it out from underneath him like it was nothing. And you can't do that to people. There are other people going through the same thing that I can tell you of. I know one of my best friends, her father has been on Percocet 30s for 15 years, I think. He's in his 70s, he has dementia, and they're taking it away. They're just not prescribing it to him anymore. After 15 years and being 70 years old, what do you think is going to happen to him? This war on drugs, this whole opioid epidemic bullshit is bullshit. I understand the new younger people like myself, if I'm trying to go to the hospital and trying to get opiates, stop it. But these people that have been on it for years, like my father, like my friend's father, like so many other people that I know, people that are dying of cancer, people that are in severe pain, they're taking their opioids away. It doesn't make fucking sense. My dad wanted me to get this out there to the world. Whether anybody agrees with it or disagrees with it, I really don't care. I agree with it, and I'm doing what I see my father's last wishes were. So, just chew on it a little bit, think about it, and then go in there and try and get some sleep, I guess. Hopefully I'll be back in Florida soon.